So these are the highlights. So that's everybody who turned up for future reference. So Bill Butler was there and handed me this interesting thing, which is Scrabble Rubik Cube. So every vertical and horizontal line is a word. He said he did write it up for Bruce for data file, but somehow or other it's never got published, so we should perhaps...
I think it's still on my list.
Is it on your list? So,
the other thing is his diagrams.
He gave another copy.
I couldn't make sense of his diagrams either. It's not very well written.
Okay.
I didn't realise it was a cube.
But it's a cube. It's a Rubik's cube. He said this version is almost impossible. He did show me another one which you haven't got, where each side is a different colour as per a Rubik cube, which I think would be marginally easier to do. But yeah, that's quite a challenge. Anyway,
of course, we've got on that. Against the Rubik cube, we have to have the middle square the right way up.
Ah, indeed.
Don't on the Rubik's cube.
So there were about 46 of us. Eric unfortunately had to step out, so Eric Smith, so he's not on the picture, but he was definitely there. We had 4 ladies attend, including one of them who a lot of the gents turned up and put their favourite calculators in front of them. Obviously Jeff Quickfall turned up and put Disky in front of him, the Apollo guidance computer thing, which we'll get to, but the appropriately named Ms. Slide Rule had 4 slide rules on her desk in front of her, rather than 4 HP calculators that most other people had. So Eric Reckland's USB updates, as I mentioned on there. I've got this if you've got a laptop or a very fast memory disk, 256 gig stick. His minor updates are that he's tried to collect together all of the emulators and put them into a directory, and he's also captured the series 80.org, his hpcount.org, hp41.org. They've all been updated, and the HHC conference proceedings are all on there now. New is Jean-Francois' Jeff Calc page, that's archived on there. He's managed, I think, to get all of the comp.sys.hp48. I know he was missing a year that he couldn't find. And he's also got his calculator literature archive, which is an absolute work of art, of all of high-resolution versions of virtually every manual and application.
Is that on this 256 gig stick?
It's on the 256 gig stick as well. So, like I say, I have... It's on my machine, so if you've got something big enough to store it and enough time for it to transfer, because it's 256 gig,
yeah, it's quite big.
It's quite big. We had Mitch Abrams, from HP Calculator Business. He's 38 years HP engineer. He's now responsible for brand licensing. So as part of his brand licensing, HP are responsible for things like quality standard, quarterly business reviews, channel and regional alignment, product reviews, all of the rest of it, trademark license agreements, key quality requirements, corporate social responsibility, marketing, and royalty. And then it's the licensee that is responsible for developing the product to HP's standard and getting HP to agree it and sign it off. The licensee is responsible for marketing, customer support, supply chain, inventory, regulatory requirements, so all the CE marking and all the rest of it, quality, customer experience reporting, sales promotions, product roadmaps. Interestingly, it is HP's desire to reintroduce the brand, particularly to teenagers. So they want to actively target and promote HP as a brand to teenagers, because HP doesn't feel that it has enough visibility. And we all know that we bought calculators because they were superbly well engineered while we were at university and that sort of stuff, and then you go on and probably buy something that costs a lot more expensive from HP. So they want to try and do that. HP described the current product line as out of date, possibly with the exception of the Prime, which we'll get to in a minute. Python is now mandated in Europe as the programming language that is taught in schools, and hence why there is MicroPython-ish sort of on the Prime now. So not only is there PPL, Prime Programming Language, there's CAS, which has its own programming environment. There is Python-like syntax in CAS, so that's the third variation of programming, and there is now actually Python in there. And there is, if you've not played with it before, there is an HP41 emulator written in Python on the Prime, which is faster than an HP41. So they are looking to update their range, and one would presume the Prime firmware frequently and quickly in order to address the education market.
Can the Prime Python access the USB?
No, I don't think so. If it can, we haven't found out where it is yet, but Gunter will probably work that out for me.
You can, because you can
Well,
eval statements.
You can eval out to PPL. So I suppose yes, you could actually.
You can write that in the class.
Okay.
Yeah, you could do it. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Well, let's run Greaseweasel.
Greaseweasel we'll get onto in a bit.
Okay.
So we then had David Joachim from Royal. So you know that Royal are the HP licensee for the Americas, whereas Moravia are the licensee for the rest of the world. So the Royal Typewriter Company is over 100 years old. Interestingly, they bought Olivetti. So if you ever wonder what happened to Olivetti, no. They are responsible for product design and marketing, but they are not a manufacturer. They, as a company, sell shredders, cash registers, water coolers, laminators, time management things, calendars and stuff. Royal Go printers, which are some sort of like modern equivalent of the HP IR printer. Sharpeners, staplers, automotive products, and I don't know what my "and" was, I'm sorry about that. They've recently last month shipped 60,000 HP 12Cs to Brazil. So they are selling them. The problem that they've got is that Trump added 25% tax to Chinese made products. HP didn't increase the prices of their devices, so consequently they're not actually making any money on anything that's made in China in the HP range. Yes. So, however, products that are manufactured in the Philippines are not impacted by the Trump tax, so that's okay. They do rely on Moravia. He did say that the 12C CE is selling better than they expected, but they are wary of committing too many resources to doing anything with it. If you go to hpofficesupply.com, you can get a 15% discount until the end of the year. Quite why you would want to do that, I don't know. Specify HHC 15, and you can get 15% off a shredder or a stapler. Goodness knows what the general consensus was amongst the attendees was that they didn't seem terribly committed to HP calculators. Moravia then came on. Klaus is responsible for the Prime, and if you remember last year he sent me a wireless connectivity kit that we used at the conference last year. He is very keen on the Prime. He has a team looking at the online bug tracker now. They are currently working on updating the iOS and Android HP Prime apps, because they haven't been updated since they took over. But he said it's a very complex task because you've got to meet Apple and Google's requirements for app development, and a lot has changed in the years since it was last released. So it isn't a straightforward update. It's not just a recompile it and everything will work. It'll be you've got to use different libraries and goodness knows what. So it's more complex than they had expected. They have reached agreement with Dr. Paris to update the Prime CAS, so he is going to update it to the latest version of his CAS software, which is good. We should see release updates increasing in frequency. They're going to have a beta program, so they will be releasing beta software for us enthusiastic testers to test. They are going to continue developing and investing in the Prime, and I did point out that at our conference last year he promised me a new connectivity kit for the Mac that doesn't crash every time I disconnect the calculator, and he apologised for not having done the third of his 3 promises. So he did the 12C update. Is that right?
Yeah.
He did the 15C CE. He did do the connectivity kit for the PC, but he's not yet done it for the Mac. So and they did bring out a new version of firmware as well, didn't they? So there were 4 things actually. Yeah. He then handed over to Redeem. Okay, hold on to your hats. 6 new calculators with Hewlett-Packard badges on them this year. So Redeem is responsible for all HP calculators except the Prime. He says the 15CE is shipping well worldwide, and the demand is perhaps better than expected. Expected, even. A few people complained about keyboard and bezel issues. This was a thing related to the Kimpo factory. The second production slot is going to have protective film added to the bezels. And the keyboard issues should have been fixed.
As opposed to the packaging.
As opposed to the packaging, yes, because the protective strip is on the outside of the packaging, not on the display.
How many of you guys? Don't want to interrupt you. How many of you actually had slight scratching on the bezel?
No.
No.
So, but they're not sure yet whether they will do a third run of the CE, of the 15C CE. So there will be 3 premium desktop calculators, so the Office Calc 102, the 202 and the 302, and there will be light versions of those, so the 108, the 110 and the 112, which are the same but fewer digits, I think. So I think 8 digit rather than 12 or something like that. Is that right? I asked about will we all beta testers for the 16C CE, because it's available as an Easter egg on the 15C CE. Jose in Spain has produced a very nice keyboard overlay, which some people had, which you drop onto a 15C CE when it is in 16C mode, and it looks like you're using a 16C CE. But it is not yet confirmed for production, maybe dependent on how well the 15, but it's going to be much lower volume. You know, the number of people apart from us 8, you know, I mean, given that some people can't even be convinced into buying a 15 in the room, can't be convinced to be buying a 15C CE, maybe not everybody in the room can be convinced to buy a 16C CE, but I'd have one.
We've got 16 Cs anyway.
Well, we have, yeah. So the target worldwide audience for a 16.
Buy a 16C here.
Yeah.
As a backup.
As a backup, yeah.
So you can do what?
They are open to potential collaboration in future to help future developments as well, which is interesting. Their next project will be, hold your hats if you're like the 12, a HP 12C Premium or an HP 12C Ultimate, possibly with a dot matrix display and a rechargeable battery and or USB-C connectivity. And that's because the Platinum circuitry is end of life, and they hope to introduce that by the end of next year, which is pretty soon. So in product development terms, so that's all pretty good news. Eric then talked about recreating the 15C manual. He manually created the fonts used in the manual from scratch to make them more consistent. The fonts are on the HHC disc, so Bruce, if you want, you can take them off there and then use them for printing 15C listings, which is excellent. He fixed many errors. He redrew a few diagrams, and then a few more, and then a few more, and then a few more, and then took over his life. The program listings, some of the program listings in the 15C manual were not commented. So between him and Gene and others, they commented every line of every program that is in the manual, which is pretty cool because some of the things are quite obscure. He also re-engineered the Advanced Functions Handbook, which, as everybody probably knows, is an absolute work of art. But he's re-engineered but it's currently only available as a PDF. I think we probably ought to go into production and use some of our reserves to actually make this thing. But there we go. That's my opinion.
As an aside, I did go to our printer, but it wasn't the regular bloke in the shop at the time, and I think he misunderstood and gave a quote for A4. Not realising A5, but it was like 100 quid each.
That's a bit steep.
I think that's
Yeah.
I'm sure we can get it for less.
I'm sure we could get it for less. So
it's not A5, it's even more.
It's half A5, is it? So it's A6, is it? Or 2/3? Yeah. Anyway.
No, it's actually A5.
Is it? Oh, folded.
The one is. So
the new one.
Well, the actual manual shipped with the 15C Collector's Edition is A5.
Right. Yeah.
But the page size, the page dimensions be kept the same. So Eric has effectively scaled it up.
Yeah, to make it more readable. Which he also mentioned that for all of us with aging eyesight, it made it. So basically, everybody who's bought one.
I need to put my reading glasses on to read it.
Yeah. Jake then talked about 25 years of the PPC archives. He's added various things. So on the stick is 2.43. That was updated in April. He added into that introducing an HPCC leaflet, which was not there before, and our conference proceedings from 2022. He's added additional EduCount material and everything that I managed to get Francis Hookham, curator, to scan for me. So that will be in the next version. That will be in the November release, so that's not on the stick. He's also got hold of the HP Measure and Invent, the big thick books and all that sort of stuff, and scanned all the calculated sections of those. So November release will be all the material from HHC 2023 and all of our Hookham material as well, because we realise that what Jake has been scanning, and he's got thousands and thousands of documents, but it's all from the US, pretty much, there's some German stuff and some French stuff and things like that, but all of the UK stuff was a lot of it was specific to us. And when I started showing him things that I found in the Hookham, he said, I've never seen these before, so I've sent him piles of stuff on that. Chuck talked about the HP Portable Plus DRAM ROM, which slots in the side. The Portable Plus has got two sections in the back, and you can plug this in. It's known as the ROMulator. It's got two 256K RAM banks. Was used in the development process to develop the ROMs, but like our MLDLs that we had on the HP 41, it's RAM pretending to be ROM. Yeah. And he can, and the software, there's burn.com available on the Portable Plus, takes an e-disk out and produces the necessary information so the ROMs could be burned. So that addresses the worldwide audience of 24 of us that have got one of those, and none of us have got a ROMulator, but there we go. He also talked about the HP disk, which Anders Gustafsson has developed in Finland, and this is I should have brought it with me, but there just wasn't room in my bag. So it's a tiny weeny little board with a display where you can hilariously we've stuck 2 gig micro SD cards in the back, and Chuck and I hope to have loaded up every piece of software ever created for the IPC, the Integral PC, all on one 2 gig micro SD card. It'll have room to spare. So you know the Integral is the one that looks like a sewing machine with the electroluminescent display and that sort of thing. The hilarious thing about it is that I've got one of these, and it doesn't just work with the Integral, it works with all devices as well. So you can plug it into a HPIB measurement device, and where it would have looked for a disk and written the measurements to the disk, it will work. He's tested it with 9000 series, he's tested it with 85s because he can get those, but he hasn't got an Integral. Chuck and I have been trying to reproduce a bug on this for a year, and this, I mean, literally 2 days ago he wrote to me and Chuck and said he's managed to reproduce the behaviour but on a different machine, so now he knows what to go and look for. So when we do that, we can reflash it, reprogram it through a PIC controller, and hopefully we've got a cheap, reliable, portable HPIB disk that we can use on any machine, which will be very cool. And the funny thing about it is, because you're making something that's really tiny out of modern technology, getting it to actually sit on the desk is really hard, because HPIB cables will tend to want to hold it in the air, you know, and you've got this thing wanging about in the air. So I think when I get Rose round to designing a case for it for us, we'll probably have to put a bit of cast iron in the bottom or something like that, so that the lead doesn't pull it about the desk.
I'm wondering, there's enough space to fit inside the Integral.
If you can break out the HPIB,
well, the HPIB is just a cable from common logic.
Is it on the bus that goes to one of the boards?
The connector on the back of the Integral,
yeah,
the ribbon cable, straight to a socket goes on the board. I can't remember if it's logic board A or logic board B.
Yeah, might be able to do.
Service manual.
That'd be cool.
Should be possible.
Gene talked about things that the HP41 designers got wrong. Nearly everybody, when asked what their favourite calculator was when they were introducing themselves, nearly everybody said the HP41. And so he created a list of the things that HP, because we tend to be, see it through rose-tinted spectacles. But he said these are the things that they got wrong. So the overlays, generally too thick, nice and robust, but not reversible. And this is because it's got the double width enter key. Well, and the keyboard is not even symmetrical, even if you take that into account. So there are, and I know Vlodic gave a pile to me many years ago. Was it Jake who started off with it? Various people did it with a reversible version of the keyboard overlay made out of card.
Jake did it, and Richard Nelson, the other Richard, sold.
Right.
I don't think his were reversible.
Right. So
made reversible.
I've still got a stack of them somewhere where you can write on one side, then turn them over, and they still work, even though you've got the double width enter key. The tones. Why did they not make real tones? Why did they not allow it to alter the duration? That was fixed by me, apparently, because I produced the play ROM routine, which allowed you to specify the tone and the duration. So that sort of got fixed. ROM subroutines. You cannot, Vlodic, jump into the middle of a routine in ROM. The TI, interestingly, so the TI 5859 was sort of contemporary with the 67 and 97. They had, you could do second program 16, subroutine 104, which took you into program 16 and line 104 and ran it as a subroutine. If you want to fix that, they fixed that. They spotted that very quickly, and XE in the PPC ROM and other places fixes that. It allows you to jump to a program number of a subroutine in ROM. View alpha, but never stop. So if you've got set flag 21 and no printer attached, view alpha stops execution. So there is a VA routine in to replace View Alpha in the PPC ROM that fixed that, because you might want to have a continuously running program that just slapped a new value on the display without ever stopping. Extended memory, you can't execute programs there, and data is effectively last in, first out. So Angel, did we say, has fixed this with his XMEM twin, which solves some of the problems, and he adds XStore and XRecall and that sort of stuff. Gene asked, why on earth did they put in decimal to octal and octal to decimal conversion? I mean, we've already had this discussion, haven't we, about how many people on the planet use octal now. Nobody, unless they use chmod on their Unix system daily, like we do. So was that?
I suspect it was a historical thing.
Yeah, I think it was a historical thing.
But the 7-segment machine, they only use digits.
But the 67 and 97.
65 has it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Does it? I've got a 65. Maybe it does.
Yeah.
Why did they? So 2 ROM entries wasted, possibly, that they could have used for something else. Why has the 41 got in its mainframe ROM advance? I mean, unless you connect a printer to it, it's not going to do anything. So why is it in the mainframe ROM, not in the printer ROM? So you've wasted another ROM entry. We've got one. If you've ever looked at the byte table, you'll know that there are 1 byte instructions for labels and go-tos and all the rest of it, and 2 byte ones. So why? So they've got, and that was to reduce space. So they put in label 0 to label 14 as 1 byte instructions. But why? Why did this?
Is advance present so that you can write a program that can talk to a printer if it's attached? So you don't have to detect, you can just write a program that generates some results, and then if you happen to have a printer attached and on,
yeah,
they get
probably.
printed, and
But
if not, they don't.
yeah, but you're missing all
the
the other print functions, so it's a bit weird, isn't it?
Maybe it was a compatibility thing, so you could run the same code whether you had or didn't have the printer.
But you see, the 6797 compatibility functions were actually in the card reader ROM, weren't they? So not in the mainframe. So anyway,
It is cool.
it's odd. So he suggested, well, if you had labels 0 to 10. Then we would have saved some entries in the entry table, and you could have given them over to other instructions. So he suggested, unlike some of the other machines, it did not have linear regression. It didn't have correlation. It didn't have permutations and combinations, and you could have squeezed those into the. Well, he's
the point
the point.
Labels are all essentially 1 ROM routine.
Well, the thing is,
it wasn't 15 separate label routines in the ROM. It was 1 routine.
yeah. The thing is that they may simply have been running out of space in the ROM.
The ROM is very tightly packed.
It is very tightly packed. So they may, if they'd freed up byte table entry points, they may not have been able to use them because there just wasn't the space to do it. So anyway.
Sorry, Mark, just go back. So 0 to 14. So that's 0 to 15.
Yeah.
With 1 reserved for something else.
Yeah, one would use some other one, still be what it was.
So this is just fitting a binary size,
Yeah. Oh, we understand why they did it, but what?
How would it save ROM going 0 to 10?
No, save. Sorry,
Into the byte table.
Yeah, entries in. I didn't mean ROM. I mean entry table. In the byte table.
Okay,
Yeah. So you could have used the bytes.
Yeah.
The single byte instruction to mean something else, like a permutation or a combination. But whether they just didn't have the ROM space to implement the code for permutation and combination might have been why they stopped where they did. Yeah. Craig, and this has come up on our online meeting. So Craig has built a thing called CC41, and this is command line 41. So what his ambition is to do is to create a 41C that is usable from the command line on first of all Linux, secondly MacOS, which is Unix of course, and the other operating system. So what is DOS? Yeah, that's the one. So it is not an emulator, it's a simulator. Yeah, so he's used the latest super extended precision library, but execution can be scripted. So if you want to run a maths program that you've written for the 41, you can feed raw code, raw 41 code or text or whatever into this, and you can script its execution, and then you can give it the power of whatever your super duper fast machine is and get answers very quickly. And he's added the ability to send source code directly to the 41X by an appropriate translation routine and that sort of thing. So if you've got one of those, you can take code out of it and then run it quickly on a physical calculator. You can send it to a 41, but you need a PC that's capable of having the HPIL card and all that palaver, which means it's limited to the 10 people in the world who've got that. Oh, sorry, I've left it somewhere. Could you pull the 41 out of the top of my rucksack? Which is there, thank you. A week before Apple introduced USB-C charging to their iPhone line, I received, thank you very much, the HP 82120D battery pack. It's even printed on it from Diego Diaz, and that is a rechargeable battery for the 41, and I'll try not to break the thing this time. So it fits in, and inside you've got a LiPo battery with a cut-off switch, so the contacts are only live if the switch is pushed in. Yeah, so the switch clicks in when you put it inside the case of the calculator. It's got USB-C charging before the iPhone. So well done to Diego for upstaging Apple. The USB-C charger fits in so the calculator's working, but it fits in the side port. So the only thing that you've got to do is, if you've got a gold ball 41, is you've got to take the gold ball ones out or use an insulated plug. So my CX wasn't a gold ball version, so I just plug it in.
CXs?
Sorry?
Were any CXs gold
No,
ball?
I don't think so. No.
I don't think they were.
No. But the thing with this is
that a half nut?
This is a half nut, yeah.
You can't have a gold ball half nut.
No, you can't. No, that's right.
The circuit board's wrong.
So the thing is, I find that this might be because I'm running Diego's Knob 64D, and I've basically overwritten every interrupt routine in the machine code to do things that I want it to do, which is why when I turn it on it says don't panic, and it also powers up the HPIL loop and shuts it down when I turn it on and off, and preserves my debugger's buffer for where I got to last debugging machine code and all sorts of stuff like that. So as a consequence of which, my 41 seems to go through batteries very quickly, and I don't know if you've noticed, they're getting expensive now, aren't they, as the volumes of them are going down. So this lasts and lasts and lasts and lasts. The battery indicator works correctly, so there's a circuit board in there that tells you that adjusts what's going on with the LiPo battery. When it gets to 20% battery capacity, it basically just through the power that it's sending out, sends the right amount of power out to the 41 that it turns on the battery indicator. You've still got probably months of use before you have, but he recommends that you recharge it as soon as the battery indicator comes on. Hopefully Angie's not listening now. The rechargeable battery pack is relatively expensive. $20. Yeah.
By 100 or?
Yes. So he's making them in batches of 12 every month or two at the moment. Sylvan has gone and bought one for every one of his 41s, and I don't know, he's got about 20 of them, hasn't he? So you know, if you're prepared to pay that amount of money just for the convenience of being able to charge it over USB-C.
Fireball in your pocket, don't you?
Sorry?
A
Fireball. Well, the board actually comes apart. You can disable it permanently. You can do all sorts of things on it.
Lithium-ion battery.
But it's a lithium-ion battery. So you have got
talking about real fireballs.
Yeah, real fireballs. Yeah. Anyway, that's that one. So Sylvan presented that. You could always carry it in a lipo bag, you know, an aluminium.
The whole calculator.
Yeah.
I value my calculator too much for that.
Well, yeah. But he does suggest that if you are going to store, if you're not going to use it for a long period of time, he does say take it out and put it in a lifeboat bag. So, yeah. Sylvan then talked about the Max module. This has been in development for a long time by Monty Dalrymple. So Monty Dalrymple created the 41CL. He's a microprocessor designer. He has got into a single module the Max, and as its name suggests, what it basically does is max out a 41, any 41. So if you've got a 41C, it will give it quad memory, extended memory, a timer, and 64K-ish of expanded memory, which you can use through Anhill's additional routines. So it turns it into a mega machine. If you've got a CV, it does all of that, but without the quad memory. If you've got a CX, it does it without the quad memory and the timer and the extended memory module, but the extended functions module, but the extended
It ends with two extended memory modules.
So it's basically two extended memory modules. That's right, yeah, and then the 64K of, or whatever it is, of expanded memory. It is the chip, because of getting all of that functionality onto something that fits inside a module case. It's a burn it and that's it, and then if there's a bug in it, they chuck it out, and they're testing every possible bank switching mechanism known, you know. So you can max out with the latest ROMs that Anhill and all the rest of the gang are producing. You can have 8 and some 4 bank switch. So you can have a 128K of ROM inside your 41 with next to no bother, pretty much, plus 64K of RAM, so you can swap personas for your 41 from work to leisure to holidays and stuff like that. It's in test at the moment, and probably will be until they just nail the final things, but that, when it comes out, I think will be the next essential buy for the 41, and will take us another 10 years of using it. So without the cost of buying a CL, and totally compatible with all your original peripherals, and using a single slot, which is pretty cool. So I would like one of those when they come out, Christmas list. So yes.
Bulk batch with HPCC or £7.
Yeah, let's do that. Bob talked about the DM32. So the DM32, I think we've seen before. Latest version, precision improvement as per the DM42, memory improvement. So when you ask it for mem, it reports 434K free, which is insane, isn't it, for a 32? It's the latest one is at least twice as fast as the previous version, I think, was what it was getting at. The hardware is final and is available to purchase. It is not an inexpensive device. It is double the price of a 15C CE, I think, possibly more than that. So it's not an impulse buy. They say that the software is in beta, but there are now state files in it which are actually in text, so you can edit them in a text editor, and they allow you, because you can hold multiple ones of those in the RAM, and it's limited only by the RAM, and nobody's found out what the limit is yet because nobody's created that many different personas of the 32. But with about 10 keystrokes, you can get from one persona to another persona in the machine without having to plug it into your PC or anything, which is quite cool if you're a 32 aficionado. It has import and export via USB-C, but at USB 2 speeds. The stack and global registers are shared between states, so you could process stuff, leave it in the registers, switch state, and carry on processing it in another persona, which would be, if you're really into your mathsy type stuff, then that might be quite cool. Due sometime soon, they are going to add the ability to call a label in another state file as a subroutine. So what we said about the 41, not being able to call other thing. So you won't have to switch persona, it will be able to subroutine call into another persona, and then effectively you've got, well, as far as the 32 is concerned, unlimited storage, and you get over the limit of 26 global labels, because you can only have A to Z, can't you, on the 32. So that's all pretty impressive if you're prepared to pay 200 or something pound for a 32. But it, you know, state of the art, and it does look. I think it looks like a 32, apart from the top row of keys are blank.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the top row of keys are to give you, work as soft menu keys. But because it's basically in the 42 case, the DM42 case, it looks like a 32, but with an extra set of keys which are unlabeled. Joey Shepherd attended the last HHC, was talking to Richard, and Richard was asking what he did, and he said, I'm knocking up calculators DIY at home. He went, and Richard said, oh, you ought to tell us about that. So he went home, wrote a presentation, and the following day got awarded Best Speaker at the conference, apparently. Were you there for that?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's been working on a 6507 based graphing calculator. It's not production or anything like that. He added a fourth interpreter. He was taking part in some internet competition about 6502s. 6502 keeps cropping up, where you were limited to 8K of ROM, or 8K of RAM or whatever. So he was trying to get it all in there in 8K, which, as you can imagine, is quite difficult. So he realised that rather than writing machine code, writing assembler, what he'd need to do was put another language in it. So he put in Forth, which is close to RPL, as we know, pre-processed the code on his PC, turned it into Forth, put a Forth interpreter inside the calculator, inside the 8K. But his problem was that he added the interpreter, and that took his 9K ROM up to 12K of ROM, and then he was converting the routines, and he gave up in the end because the competition finished. But he needed to basically rewrite nearly everything in Forth in order to get it to fit inside the 8K, which was a competition rule, not a practical thing. He did, and his slides, for anybody who's interested in it, he did a whole a huge number of slides on DIY calculator keyboards, so how to create them, and like was it Edison, whatever, about he created the light bulb, but he first made 100 light bulbs that didn't work, or whatever it was, or something. Same sort of thing. He's tried 100 ways of creating a keyboard, none of which worked, and came out with a couple of ways that look like they're sort of good, one of which looks like it's sort of almost as good as double injection molded keys, but with a 3D printer with 2 filaments, that sort of thing. So Eric talked about Grease Weasel. I think you've talked about that here, have you? Is that right? You talked about Grease Weasel?
I made the misfortune to buy one.
You bought one?
Moaned about
So
yes.
Eric bought one of these because he's archiving everything that he can lay his hands on. So for those who don't know, Grease Weasel connects to a standard floppy disk drive mechanism, and then you connect it to your PC, and all it reads and writes is magnetic flux, so the analog signal. So you just need, on top of that, you need the appropriate software to decode any non-standard format floppies. So Flux Engine is a piece of software for it. Already reads and writes with Grease Weasel and supports the common DOS, HP, LIF, Amiga, CPM, and all the rest of it. But Eric tried to update the software because it's open source, it's on GitHub and what have you. But David Given saw what he was doing. He's the author of the Flux Engine, and he added 71 LIF format images in earlier this year, so that it can read and write 616K 9114 discs for the 41, 71, and 75. So he said they're incredibly enthusiastic about adding different types of formats to it.
It shouldn't be necessary to have different types of formats, really, because it is compatible with the IBM format. It's the same MFM encoding.
Yeah, but it's got a different number of tracks.
Yeah, but that's something resettable by the user.
Well, yeah. But anyway,
so moving back Grease Weasel, I'll tell you just now, the documentation is atrocious.
Well,
I couldn't work out how to use it.
Yeah. Jim Donnelly talked about, I should have put the slides, I've got pictures of this, but he talked about time and date functions. So he was saying, so he started off with the latest calculators and things, and how we've got a time function, a date function, stopwatches and all of that sort of thing. And he introduced the idea of a portability index for time and date devices. So that would have a portability index of 5 because it's very portable, whereas Stonehenge would have a portability index of 0 because although it can tell the time and line up for the equinox, it's definitely not portable. Similarly, there are
I have to contradict you there, because the latest thinking is Stonehenge was actually moved from South Wales.
Oh,
That's
So
definitely
originally
non-zero.
non-zero. Oh, okay, but
Your cave paintings,
but the cave,
to a mountain.
yeah, the cave paintings were attached to a mountain, and there are cave. He showed in his slides cave paintings where they've got phases of the moon and things like that in the cave paintings. So that's interesting.
So it's got a portability index of 0.00001.
Indeed.
One could be pedantic and say it's actually on a moving planet.
So he started off with time and date functions on HP calculators and went back all the way to the 17th century instrument makers, the Byzantine sundial calculator from AD 650, the Antikythera, which I watched the latest Indiana Jones film on the plane on the way out to Orlando. So the Antikythera, as well as the 30 or so functions that they've identified that it did, apparently it also identifies wormholes in time-space that the Nazis can fly through and go back and alter history. But anyway, so which oddly is not a function implemented in the Science Museum replicas of the Antikythera that Jim had just received that week from the Science Museum, and is a £3 brass instrument. Goodness knows what it cost. I can't find how much they cost. But he held it up and showed us it, and then said, "I'll pass it round the room." And everybody in the room went, "No!" Anyway, he did, and we did. We were very careful. David Hayden talked about optimizing Mandelbrot on the Prime. His programs are on the 23 USB stick, but they didn't deliver the benefits he expected for various reasons, and he explained that. But Gunter was in the room, and he has written the Mandelbrot Explorer, which I have on my Prime, which is very, very good, and which allows you to zoom in ad infinitum and is very fast. So there's just some interesting stuff if you're into that sort of thing, and you've got a Prime. Jim did a compare and contrast of the 91 and 92. So yeah, the architecture was based on the 20 series ACT, about 3,000 instructions per second, and he talked about in his presentation the difference in construction internally between the two. So you can see all those on the slides. Jeff said that there's a resistor that you can take out on the board and put a pot in its place, and then it turns it into a contrast control for which.
There is a printhead current.
Yeah.
Be careful doing it.
Interestingly, the other thing to be aware of if you're using one of these machines is that there is a particular non-normalized number which if you put it on the calculator, it causes the print head to stall while it's turned on, and it will burn out. And as far as we know, that's the only known way to destroy an HP calculator by a program that it is running.
Interesting fact. Well, not the top cats. The processor clock inductor capacitor network is on the printer circuit board, not on the processor, not on the logic board. Do you know why?
No.
Because the components look accurate. So the processor speed is not that consistent between machines. This is the error in the 45, and therefore they had to vary some of that resistance, like one of the others, to compensate for the processor speed. So that meant the processor, the printer board was then universal, because the processor speed was set by it, and the printhead intensity was set by it.
Right.
So it gets me plug it in. If they hadn't all set, they'd have tweaked things, they put the board in.
John Doran and Eric Smith then showed us this thing. So John Doran, they are members of the 6502 club, which has been meeting since the 6502 was in production every week since then. And John Doran has built this Nixie tube display. It is beautiful. I don't know if you can see on the slides, but it's got, can you see, look, danger high voltage, 170 volts or something through each one of these, so it gets pretty toasty when they're running.
Interesting, HP never used Nixie tubes in their calculator.
No. So he's built this beautiful display, which I've managed to photograph sort of through its Perspex lid and be able to see the circuit board. And Eric has built this box, which contains a non-Pareil HP32E, because of course, why would there be a C version with a Nixie tube display? So it loses the contents when you turn it off. Yeah. So, but Eric is hoping to monetize this as he described it. So there we go. Gene then talked about the TI-30. He likes to wind people up, doesn't he? So for those who don't know, it's basically a TI 1250 with logs and trig. So a number of notable things about this. The University of Denver produced 2 school courses to encourage use. It was functionally equivalent to the SR40. The SR40 cost $20 more and had the function legends on the keys, whereas the TI-30 had them printed above the keys to make it cheaper to make, so it didn't have to have a more expensive production. The SR40 had a rechargeable battery. The frame size, the physical body, is the same size as the TI programmer and lots of other things, but it was dirt cheap due to the fact that they made it in one chip, no other components on the board, no screws, so 6 interconnecting plastic clips in its construction, so $25 compared to $395 for an equivalent HP 35. So as a consequence of which they sold over 15 million of these things. That, and so cheap, went in every school, and it had the course books to teach people how to use it.
It used a PP battery, one of those.
Yeah, that's right, PP3, yeah. Gunter talked about Python on the Prime. He's banging his head at Python on the Prime in its current form. There are all sorts of things that you can do to make it work better, like turn off auto load, change the heap size, change the memory size. He recommends that you put every program in a def so that they can be called independently. You can call HP Prime eval to call out to PPL functions like the USBs and backwards and forwards and that sort of thing. It's a bit clunky. And there's some other things. It's got things like string concatenation and stuff. He says it is stable, but the moment you include modules, any Prime modules from the library that are in there, the moment you include any library modules, it all becomes a bit buggy and a bit crashy. So and there's lots of items that are listed in the catalogue on the Prime that aren't actually implemented. So it tells you it's got this that's what I found. It tells you it's got a function in the library. It says it claims to have imported it, but it just doesn't execute when you try using it. So there's a lot of work to do on that.
I found sometimes if you say, there's two syntax, you can say import whatever, and you get all of the functions.
Yeah.
But you have to name them.
Yes.
And then you can say, like, import HP eval from HP Prime, and then just say eval directly. Sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't. So that might be what you're seeing in missing functions.
Could be.
Is that you actually have to import
it and then use it.
name.
Yeah, maybe so. Eric Smith talked about another Voyager. What he's done is he's got a 12C or an appropriate DM15 reflashed to a 16, but then because there's a whole load of keys on the 16 that only work if you're in hex, non-floating point. They're spare. They don't do anything in floating point mode. So in floating point mode, there's actually space on the keyboard to add log and trig functions, which is quite interesting. So conceivably, we could even have a 16C CE with an Easter egg of additional log and trig functions from the 15 that are usable when it's in floating point mode, which would be interesting. And he's got a keyboard overlay to show the updated capability. He will be monetizing this, so you will be able to buy. Oh, sorry, it's this that he was monetizing, not the other thing. So you'll be able to buy these in future. He said he may eventually open source it when he's not making any money out of it, sort of thing, but it won't be anytime soon.